Hello, if you just joined us, we're going to get started here. We're doing introductions, so feel free to type the second line who you are. We got Susan from Bern, Florida, Cello. We got Mike Kemmler, Huron Consulting. And we got a speaker I'll introduce in just a minute here. We got Quintessa. We got Jan Maurer, University of Denver. Jason Maloff, Nationwide Insurance, North Carolina. We got James from Columbus, Nationwide, and we got Shambaskur in Thailand. All right, John Hagelberg, American Honda, Torrance, California. Well, keep the introductions coming here. I want to introduce our speakers for today. They are Laura Solman and Amy Groves from IBM, and they're going to take us around here on this training program on inclusion. It's a topic that I've been deeply involved with the Agnostic group, working in partnership with good folks at Global Innovations. We have some of them on the line here. So I'm keenly interested in this topic, and I realized from working on it that it's an interesting topic, also obviously a very sensitive one, and one that can be highly personal. And I will always argue that virtual world would be a perfect environment to do just such a training for various reasons. And it seems like from my conversation so far with Laura and Amy that they've been really creative about using the virtual world in the best way to do training on inclusion and diversity. So with that, Laura and Amy, the meeting is yours.
Very good. Thank you, Anders. Hello, everyone. This is Laura Solomon. Let me introduce myself and my colleague, Amy Groves. So I work on the global design team as an instructional designer in IBM as part of leadership development. And Amy, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi there. Yeah, I am Amy Groves, and do mostly building and scripting, but a little bit of instructional work. And so I joined Laura as one of our lead designers of this project. There are a couple of other people who were not able to be here, Connie Casarino and Anita Guha, and we had a whole team of people, supporting us as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge them. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to share with you this brief slide on chair controls because usually our participants are pretty new to Second Life. But let me just sort of set the stage and give you some context around kind of what we're going to do here and what this is all about. So what we're about to share with you is a module that we designed on diversity called Inclusive Leadership, and why we did it. So it actually came out of a project we had to really evaluate the effectiveness of learning and leadership learning in a 3D environment. And the reason we did it, actually we had a number of different reasons. As you know, IBM's global, so we have a large, very diverse population where diversity is a key issue. Cost of travel, as you can imagine, just like many of you, it often prohibits as much face-to-face learning as we would like. And we're in significant growth market expansion, so we're increasing our number of leaders and the need for leadership development as well as diversity awareness. And just like I'm sure many of you also, we need to justify our investments in learning. So we needed a way to sort of demonstrate effectiveness of using this 3D environment. And then finally, people were asking, so what is IBM doing in the Second Life space? And do we believe that it's the way to go for leadership development? So those were the drivers. The approach we took was to actually do a comparison study. So what we did was we redesigned a module that we already had on the same topic, but was delivered in Centra Live Virtual Classroom. So you might be familiar with it by different names, Adobe, I believe, but that kind of a tool where you have Whiteboard, Whiteboard and polling and breakout rooms. So we took the same learning objectives for this course and designed it, actually significantly redesigned it, but designed it so that it could be delivered in Second Life. And then the plan was to pilot it with a similar population and then compare the results. So let me share with you just briefly what the results were. You can see them on the slide, but I'll also just tell you Obviously, we had many, but just to highlight in terms of the comparison to Second Life, to the live virtual classroom, many people felt obviously more socially connected. Second Life really stimulated the experience in terms of diversity for them. It enhanced their understanding of the issues, and we'll share with you, I believe a lot of that has to do with content as well. And people felt more comfortable sort of discussing some of these, as Anders referred, pretty sensitive issues. And then we also had a number of focus groups, and what we heard, again, I'm sure not surprising to any of you, was people felt it was much closer to the face-to-face and in-class experience, more engaging. People really felt like they were in the same space and like they were talking to humans. So again, none of this, I'm sure, is a surprise to you. So in terms of the outcomes, so we had a number of them. So not only did we have some measurements, and there's many, many more than what I've just shared with you, but we had
from room to room and one room.
Okay, we had numerous. We had a module, a learning module, and that's what we're going to bring you through today. But we also ended up with many, many reusable assets. So orientation and tools and learner enablement and facilitator enablement. And Amy, if I'm forgetting any, please jump in. But we ended up with a whole host of assets that we can use in Second Life. And then we're quite pleased to also receive recognition from Brandon Hall in terms of best in virtual learning. So those are some of the outcomes. But now let's actually do things. So what we wanted to do, what we will do, is share with you and have you experience a number of the different tools and approaches we use in Second Life to promote this learning around this content. And we're going to have you experience it in just a minute. These are just some of the things that we'll be doing in this space. And then we will actually leave this space, and that's why Amy was giving you landmarks, because we have different breakout rooms that we'll be visiting to help you experience what we've got in these different rooms. And as the topic is diversity, we've got in each of the rooms a different activity that addresses a different constituency, diversity constituency. So although we have a similar design in each of the rooms, each one really has a different activity, and hopefully we'll get to all of them. We'll have to see how that is. All right, just a note, when we do go to the rooms, as you imagine, this was a course designed for sort of typical classroom size, 20 to 25. And the design is such that when people went into their breakout rooms, they would also break out into smaller groups, like 5. So we've got many, many more, and we're going to be staying together. So we'll give you a heads up. But when we try to go to the breakout rooms, it might be a bit crowded, and hopefully those of you that are quite adept at using camera controls might consider kind of waiting in the doorway just so we have enough room and also avoid any lagging. So let me just pause for a minute. Amy, any initial additional points you want to make before we have them experience the orientation?
Oh, sure. I think just that, this build, we used to run it behind the firewall because we were one of the folks who had Second Life Enterprise. And, of course, Lyndon discontinued that. So we did what we could to copy it over here in front of the firewall, but you may here and there see little tweaks and anomalies. There was one breakout room that we actually haven't finished even bringing over. It makes me long for the OR files that we could, just use an OpenSim and pop them in, pop them out. But I think it's pretty good, for a tour. The other thing is, I just wanted to invite all of you, especially if you have trouble today squeezing into the rooms or using your camera controls to zoom in. If you have any trouble and you want to come back, you're very welcome. Normally we keep these two regions closed because we don't want to have the learner distraction, but you're very welcome to come by for a visit. I'll just leave them open for another couple of days or 3 days so you can all come back and wander around at your leisure. And then after that, even if you want to come in at a certain time, just let me know. I'll be glad to give you access so you can come in. And basically, you might be interested in this build, but you also might be interested in the fact that down on the ground level, we have Learning Commons. And that's a place where it's a general purpose space. It's a 2-region spread. And we have, it's very, very customizable for all kinds of learning. And we've applied a million use cases to it. So we use it for all kinds of things, mentoring and orientation and big meetings, small meetings, team meetings, everything you can think of. This here is not really part of Learning Commons by design, but it's very similar. So we just tossed it up here in the sky so that people could get to it. If you want to get to the rest of Learning Commons, there's a teleport map over here. And you do have the landmarks now, I think, to get back here if you need to.
Excellent.
So, shall we get started then?
Yes, so Amy's going to bring you through orientation because that's a key piece also of enabling our participants to engage in this type of learning.
And I also have to warn you, I'm going to pop all of you out of your seats. I apologize for that, but it's time to get up now, and so everybody wake up. I'm going to de-res everything that we've got, and I'm resing the Orientation Center just with the click of a button, and we should all be able to walk around in there. Okay. So you see that beginning users would probably find this to be very useful because we can bring them in here and we can give them time so that they can wander through it themselves on their own time. A lot of beginning users feel more comfortable spending time on them, by themselves. They're not really exposed. They don't show off their ignorance too much. They're a little intimidated, so it gives them plenty of time. We also have a help desk with call-in number. But also the Orientation Center is designed so that you can walk people through it, with a facilitator. So we have them start, of course, over here where the arrow is, how to walk and turn. We very carefully build things step by step, so we don't assume that people know anything when they get here. No forward references. There's always something.
I'm on a webinar. This is Second Life. I don't know if any of you have ever been exposed to it. I don't have a good.
Could you please mute your phone? I hear somebody talking. Thank you. So at each station.
How do I mute? How do I mute?
It's *6 on most phones.
Thank
you. But come back later. We'll talk to you later. At each of these stations, they're asked to do something. They don't just read. They're actually having to do something. And when the facilitator takes them through, they actually give them little fun little tests and things like that. They make them do things and shout out their answers. You all know all of this stuff, I'm sure. But as you get toward the end, we get to, for instance, the participants HUD. You might want to take one of those. Just click on that button. And you can play around with that. You'll be able to ask questions and float icons above your head and all kinds of stuff like that, just to play around. Also, these last three boards, I'm actually using the Imprudence viewer today, but if you're using the Second Life, the Linden viewer, the current one, you're probably able to see 3 Etherpad whiteboards up here. And we like Etherpad. In this case, it's called Pirate Pad. You may have seen all these before, but I really love this tool because it enables everybody to type at once. And everybody sees the same thing at the same time. So this is really, the whole idea behind, I think, this Orientation Center that makes it a little bit different from some of the others is that it can be self-serve or it can be facilitated. It is very simple. These signs were based on the viewer that we had behind the firewall when the signs were made. So you might find some differences. And also the fact that we insist that people actually practice. We make them walk around. We see them walking. We make them go up and identify, use their camera controls to zoom around and make sure that they can actually do it. So that is the Orientation Center.
Thanks, Amy. So let's move on, and we're going to bring you through some of the tools and approaches we use to promote the learning around diversity and inclusive leadership. So the first thing, Amy, if you can bring on our world map. So I mentioned we're a global, obviously global company. Our participants and our classes are all global. And so what we like to do is actually begin with inviting participants to stand on this map. You'll see it in just a minute. And ask them to stand on the country in which they reside. And we do it for a couple of different reasons. It gives them a sense of place, a sense of presence, and maybe more importantly, or most importantly, is really appreciate sort of the diversity of this group. And then we do make the point that although people may be from a similar geography, clearly there's unique differences, and again, just sort of highlight the value of bringing such a diverse group together. Can everyone see the map? I'm not sure it's fully res. Is it, Amy?
Good.
Yeah, I see it well.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
Yeah. This is very cool. This is a holodeck that you built
is.
here. It's really cool how you change the whole environment around you on the fly like this.
All right. So the next thing, and we're going to move pretty quickly. We have just a lot to show you. So the next thing is, I mentioned that this is a module. It's a module in a context of a track of learning. So it's just one of several other modules. And so we use, Amy, if you want to bring up what we're referring to sort of this block tower. But let me just turn around so I can see it also. All right, and so we use this to sort of present some context. They can see that this is one module in the course of several others. And we just spend a few minutes just sort of highlighting, where they've been, where they are now, and the learning that they have after this session. Okay, the next thing we do is we share with them a framework that we refer to 4 stages of a diversity environment. And so again, the objective is to help them both appreciate the diversity of their teams and to reduce barriers. So what we do is we bring up these, you'll see, steps that represent the 4 stages of a diversity environment. I know it takes up a lot of room, so it might be on top of you, but what we do is we use this to not only sort of teach and reinforce this framework, but then we invite participants to come onto these steps and assess the teams of which they either lead or currently on. And these 4 stages are, compliance, tolerance, commitment, and the ideal stage would be business leverage, where you really leverage the diversity of the team members to the fullest potential for business results. And so that's how we use this tool to, again, promote the learning around this framework. So, Amy, I assume this is all res. It might be building for me. Okay. So then let's do one other tool that we also use. So if you want to move this one away and bring up our brick wall. And so the goal of this program is really to both identify and appreciate the barriers that might get in the way of helping the people we lead really contribute to fullest potential. And so we use this, you'll see a brick wall in just a minute, as a metaphor.
It's there, Laura. You're just having lag.
Okay, good. So that's, as long as no one else does, that's great. So we've got this brick wall, and we use it, again, as a metaphor to help highlight the need for leaders to really both understand the barriers that might get in the way and then help address them. And that's really kind of the lead-in for the other pieces. And so we invite them to step forward and actually break down the barriers of the teams that they lead. So.
and Laura, just so that you know, because I think you're the only one who's having this lag.
That's good. Okay.
As soon as the facilitator says, break down the barriers, we break down the walls, and everybody goes crazy, throwing the bricks around at their friends and that sort of thing. But it's a really kind of a funny thing, not a lot of messaging to this, but a very powerful image.
Yeah.
And people love it.
Thanks, Amy. All right. So I mentioned that we spend some time in this main room, but then the real learning happens in the different breakout rooms. And so we start out with 20 to 25 people, and we need to quickly break them up into groups of 5. And so, Amy, if you want to share with them, we have a group assignment tool that helps us do that. If you want to share with everyone how that works.
Sure. This is something that I can't visualize for you because it's behind the scenes. But what I'll do after this is over my head, I'm going to make these tools usable by everyone, not just the facilitators. But what I'm doing is I'm clicking on this little object over here in front of me, and it's a group assignment tool. So it senses all the people in here, except for the people I fed into an exclusion list. Those are the moderators and facilitators and helpers. So all the learners or participants are on this list in this sensor. And I just press a button. I say how many groups I want. In this case, I'll just say 5. And when I press that button, it will, let's see. It didn't actually say that. Did it touch? 5 groups? Yeah, it did not work. Okay. I'm not sure why, but the idea is that it shouts out all the different group assignments, and it takes all of you and assigns you randomly to 5 different groups. And then that way we are able to control the crowd. Oh, seeing it in chat. Okay, very good. I'm glad you are, because something happened on my end and I'm not. So that makes it a lot easier for the facilitators, because they know where to send everybody, and even a beginner can see text chat. Only I can't. So for this particular tour, though, we all want to stay together so we can all talk. So we'll head over here past the teleport map to room A, and as Laura said, if you are experienced users and can just go ahead and use your camera controls to zoom far in, that would be great. We'd appreciate it.
And then if you can join us you'll see the entrance to this room, you'll see an instructions board. So if you can all kind of join us there. And there is a similar, as I mentioned, sort of a template or similar design to each of these rooms, even though the activities within them are unique. So we do ask participants to begin at the instructions board, and that's where they kind of read what they need to do while they're in this breakout room. And in this particular room, this one addresses the diversity of gender. And so specifically, it's a situation in which a female leader is leading an all-male team. So I'm not sure if we're all going to fit in there, but let's just see. And, Amy, what I might ask you to do, if you can actually click on the tools as I describe them.
Sure.
And so what we've got here is we've simulated a female leader leading an all-male team in a meeting. Whoops, we have people doing it already. And we usually ask kind of one participant to kind of be the lead and select the buttons. And what we've got is 3 scenarios. And the first one, Amy, do you want to click on that one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Now, mind you, these controls are open to everybody. So, and with a group like this, I know everybody loves to play with them. So we may see all kinds of funny things here. But basically, if I click on the block that says Scenario 1, listen to the males, you probably are hearing something over your speakers if you have them on. But you see the text that they're saying in a talk bubble, and you also hear it in the recording. And you also see a thought bubble above Anne, who's the group leader. And so you hear them talking, and you try to imagine to yourself, what is Anne thinking when she hears this?
Amy, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good. Okay.
And so what people do is they take in the message. What are these guys saying? They're talking about the game. They're using the word guys. She's wondering. She's standing up there trying to start the meeting and wondering, how do I handle this? And so it gives you directions. You just type in text chat ANN : and then oops, see somebody pressed another button. So that's it's more fun that way. But I think you get the idea. When Anne's talking, the guys have to respond. When the guys are talking, Anne has to respond. And some of you have seen that you're giving directions about how to post your message about what the guys are thinking into that thought bubble there.
Excellent. And the 2 other scenarios, maybe we won't take time to bring you through, but one has to do with the female leader being quite assertive, and then it asks how she might be perceived by the men in the room, aggressive, and then the third scenario is a situation in which she needs to leave early for her child to play, and again how that might be perceived by the others in the group. And so these are really just jumping off points to have a discussion, because then what participants are invited to do is move to a couch area, though we needed to remove the couches so we had room for everyone, but in the existing build there's couches, and we invite them to, you might say, almost like a fireside chat. And we have debrief questions that they engage in to really have a discussion about the scenario, and then bring it to their own experiences and have a rich discussion about that. You'll see they use the Etherpad to actually post their comments, and then at the end of this module, they're instructed to the comments get brought back to the main room where there's a full group debrief with all the 5 subgroups. So again, let me just pause, Amy, if you want to add anything to that.
Not at all. And we always spend the most time in the first room because the other rooms are a little bit similar. But we should pause and ask if people have questions, because I know we've been talking a lot, and I know we asked you to put your phones on mute earlier. But aside from text chat, does anybody want to speak up with a question?
This is Caroline. I have a question about your call-in. Did you actually have quite a bit of participants use the helpline for call-in, and so approximately a percentage of learners, 2%, 10%, call in for help?
You know, we did not have a lot of people who did that, although there's always, you know, right before the event starts, there's always a big flurry of activity. But we did kind of watch people. For instance, you can tell, like, say, we were behind the firewall, so we weren't using avatars with different names, but we could kind of see who's created an account and who hasn't, and we kind of sent them reminders and made sure that they understood not to wait till the last minute, as they could with something like WebEx or something. So we kind of kept after them, and I don't think we had a lot of help desk problems. They were kind of usually answered as part of the main course, you know, of what we were doing.
And a follow-up question, thank you. About how long were your experiences? Or did they come in for like an hour or two at a time, or how did you structure the time?
Well, this one was a little different. This was kind of a learning sandwich where they of course, aside from the orientation, they start in the main room, see some slides, go through all those funny 3D things that we did in the main room, and then they break out, and each person only goes to one of these rooms. They work as a team, and then they come back and report back. So that's the, you know, main room, breakout, main room sandwich. That whole thing takes easily 2 hours. It's a lot of time because there's a lot of material to cover. But there was so much interaction, we didn't find that anybody was getting bored. They said they were so busy they couldn't possibly multitask. It was a long session.
Thank you.
Yeah, good idea. Other questions? Comments?
I missed the first part, and I wondered if it's going to be, if we've recorded this so that I could go back and look at the first part.
Yeah, I can address that. Stylianus, who's here, is recording this also, and he's actually live streaming it as well. So we'll be posting the video on the Facebook page here in the next few days.
Great.
So
thank you so much.
Thanks, Stylianus, for doing this.
What about the slide? That would be great, too, those first two slides.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and also you might have missed what Amy had said at the beginning, is that this space will be left open for, I think, what, Amy, a few days. Yeah. So, you know, if you missed something or would like to come back in and just kind of explore, that's an opportunity for you as well. Okay, other questions before we go to the next room?
Does IBM use this all the time for training, or is this only in an experimental process?
Well, a couple different answers. So in terms of the space, I'll have Amy kind of share with you how the space in general is used. This project was primarily for experimental. We did end up with a learning module. It's only one of the ways that, you know, IBM addresses diversity. So we have a number of different, you know, face-to-face as well as live virtual classrooms. But Amy, did you want to share also how the space in general, other ways that we use?
Yeah, it's so different because Learning Commons itself down at or near ground level, I mean, we use that all the time, and we have people sign out the space, you know, we make sure we don't have conflicts. But that's used, I think the most popular use that we have in IBM for this, for Second Life is mentoring. It's like group speed mentoring or just group mentoring of all kinds. Sometimes it's meet and greet. The second most popular thing is probably just team meetings and stuff like that. But we've done everything. But those are the things that keep coming back over and over again. That's the repeat business. And something like inclusive leadership is, it happens a lot less frequently, but when it does happen, it's big impact because it's a lot of work. And but the learners get a lot out of it, I think. So this is
sure.
Yeah. So this one has been primarily, you know, as Laura said, it was primarily a research thing. But we do have it up and running, so we can offer classes.
This is Caroline. I've got a question on the choice of Second Life over alternative platforms. Have you guys looked? I'm sure you must have looked at other tools.
Yeah, and you know, of course, this was originally designed some time ago. But even then, we're really platform agnostic. We play with a lot of platforms, but Second Life, in addition to being highly customizable, is hugely immersive, even though there's a big long
huge number of people here.
Yeah, there really is. But it's even though there is a lot of ramp up, the payoff is so good. And so for something really, really in-depth and intensive like this, people get really, really involved in this because this is a highly personal kind of learning. When you get into actually discussing this kind of stuff with your colleagues and using all this 3D stuff, Second Life or OpenSim or Second Life Enterprise, it really is the platform to have. I certainly do like other platforms for other things, especially a fast in and out experience. But there's just nothing like Second Life to beat, for immersion.
Thank you. Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we go to the next breakout room, and then we'll leave time for questions as well. So if you either want to walk to breakout room B or use your teleport, then we'll meet you there.
And I'm actually, if you just walk around sort of clockwise along the outer circle, you don't have to go back into the main room. And I'm actually standing out there. You can also use your teleporters, it's your landmarks if you want, from your landmarks folder. And you can just walk right in there.
And similar to the other breakout rooms we mentioned, at the entrance there's an instructions board, and it gives participants guidance for the activity in this breakout room. So if you want to join me at the far end of the room in front of these 4 panels, and I'll tell you what this one's about. This activity is, we refer to it as best person for the job, and the activity is that participants are given sort of vague information about job assignments and then asked to select the best person for the job. And you can see these boards provide profiles, and they select who they believe would be the best person for each of these tasks. And then similar to before, after they've made their selections, they come to this couch area. This time we do have our couches up. And again, they're given some debrief questions that you can see on the debrief board. But the idea is to really have a discussion around why they made the selections that they did as a way to explore perhaps to what extent maturity or seniority might have biased their decision. And again, we're hoping it's sort of a safer way to begin to explore some of those issues and biases they might have to begin to address some of these barriers. And as they type in their comments on this Etherpad, and then those get brought out to the main room for a full group discussion, at which point the facilitator can bring in additional learning points. So that's the emphasis of this room. Again, let me just pause to see, Amy, if you want to add anything or any of our guests have any questions.
All right, any questions from anybody? This is one of those cases in Breakout B. The value, you understand there are no right or wrong answers. The value of the learning here is in the discussion and the insights that people get from each other. So it really helps to have this be a group activity.
Okay, so why don't we move to then Breakout Room C. And we'll meet you there.
How many people do you typically have in each breakout group?
Well, it's designed, similar to classrooms, so where you've got, 25 total, and then ideally about 5 in each breakout room at this time. One thing I think Amy referred to is, although the module is, approximately 2 hours, and we do offer people to come in sort of afterwards to then begin to explore some of the other breakout rooms, on their own time. So this one, and Amy can explain a little bit more, this one we have had some difficulty bringing over this build. So unfortunately, we have a screenshot, but we can tell you about it. So this one is all about really understanding the challenges that an employee with elder care responsibilities might have. And so the activity here is participants sit on one of these seats, and when they sit on the seat, they can see an aerial view of a calendar. And the calendar includes tasks that someone with elder care responsibilities might have, as well as sort of typical work tasks. And what they're asked to do is move around these different tasks to build their calendar so that they can kind of manage their day. And as you can imagine, you begin to appreciate kind of all those responsibilities and the challenges of making it all fit. Clearly, it doesn't fit in perhaps a typical workday. And then, again, begin to appreciate what someone with elder care responsibilities might have to deal with, and how you as a leader or manager might help someone address those challenges. So they participate in an activity. Again, they've got a debrief board, specific customized debrief questions for which it facilitates the discussion. So, Amy, you want to add anything here?
Yeah, we actually realized that we had to have real users. You always have to have real users telling you what to do. And what we found out from our pilots was that we had made it too hard. I think that you need to put a little bit too much on this person's schedule for them to be able to really fit it in. So they have to make some tough choices. But we needed to really kind of be very careful and realistic about how much we expected this person to try to grapple with. But sorry that you have to just look at a picture instead of being able to really drag the blocks around on the ground. But that was the one thing that we had to use stored inventory or what other means to be bring stuff behind the firewall, and certain things just haven't made it over yet.
Mr. Bill.
Any questions before we move on?
Just about the logistics of running breakouts like this, did you have them meet as a big group between each assignment, or did you just tell them at a certain time to rotate and go to the next and then meet after they were done with all the 5 breakouts?
Well, actually, the way it's designed is that during the course, you would only participate in one breakout room. So that would that's only what the time would afford. Yeah. So, but they do begin in the main room, similar to the activities we had to experience. Then they go to the breakout room, and then they come back for a full group debrief discussion.
Oh, so then they tell each other what they've been doing.
Correct. That's right. During the report outs, and then the facilitator also highlights key learning points and and adds in perhaps what was left out as part of the discussion.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, so why don't we move on to breakout room D.
Probably Walker Shambles had a question about how you used audio. Did you just use proximity-based audio, so people in the breakout groups were out of voice range of each other?
So I can respond to that in terms of technology. Just like in the rest of Learning Commons, we do isolate the breakout rooms spatially. Because we think that most people, in most learning activities, they don't use the telephone, right? But we did actually, this was a little bit weird, admittedly, but we did use telephone lines with little breakout facilities. We had a breakout capability in our phone lines. So people went into different breakout rooms on the phone lines as well as in the breakout areas, and then they all came back. The facilitator can pull them back to the main phone line as they join the main room. That was just a capability that we had, and we wanted to use it. One of the reasons we did that was because we knew we had a lot of beginning users. We knew they'd be wandering around. We'd have to keep lassoing them back. And the other thing is that there's some audio in the first room, and we wanted them to be able to hear both of them and play around a lot. So it is a little bit of an unusual choice, and always the phone, it seems a little bit less immersive, but we just knew we had so much immersion here, it wasn't going to hurt us.
Okay, and any other questions? All right, so it looks like everyone's here. We're in breakout room D, and again, you would read the instructions before you entered this room. This one is a bit complex. There's just a lot of pieces to it. But this one targets what it would be like to lead or be a gay consultant in a global job. And the interaction actually aims to simulate a day in the life of a gay employee to illustrate the impact of being in the closet might have on their performance and the challenges of perhaps feeling like you can't bring your full self to the job. And so, Amy, if you want to just kind of walk through this interaction for them.
Yeah, this was a kind of a thing that I wasn't sure how well this was going to go over because we have at IBM somewhere between 400 and 700,000 employees, and they're from all over the world. I wasn't quite sure how people would react to this if they're from another country where this kind of thing just isn't really accepted very much. But it actually went very well. I believe that we were able to be inviting enough to people that they were able to share their own actual feelings and impressions, and ideas without feeling too intimidated by it. But the idea is that you walk right in to the first little scenario here, and you see Anna standing in front of you, and she's a colleague. You can click on Anna and get a little note card that tells you all about Anna. So you get some background on her. So we all know who Anna is and what our relationship with her is. And she asks the very most innocuous question you can imagine. Hey, Will, how was your weekend? And this scenario forces you to be Will. So you are gay, and that's how you play it. So what are you going to say back to Anna? Well, it turns out we've learned from the discussion board that, well, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary with our partner, same-sex partner, and we had a wonderful weekend. It was jam-packed and wonderful, very meaningful, but we don't know whether to share that with Anna. We don't know how much of it to share with Anna. And just we get the realization that just a simple question like, hi, how was your weekend? Something you hear every day. If you're a gay person, it sounds differently than it does if you're a straight person sometimes. You have to really work at it. And people realize, it is a little different, isn't it? So the idea is that they all together, they're giving directions that you just left-click Anna for instructions. You get a note card about Anna, as I said, and the note card also tells you how to contribute to this whiteboard. And you see people have already put in some possible responses to Anna. They said, I didn't really do much, just hung out. That's sort of a cop-out, scaredy cat answer, but it is an answer, and sometimes maybe that's the answer you want. Other times he just comes right out and says, my partner Ned and I celebrated our anniversary. How about you? That kind of thing. So there's a variety of answers. Again, no right answers, no wrong answers, but the value is in the discussion as people weigh the pros and cons of each of the answers.
And Amy, just to add to that, the other thing we wanted to sort of address or help people address is in some way the stress of who did I tell, who knows what? And, perhaps at every interaction you always have to kind of go through that process of, what does this person know about me, and is this a person I can really share, my full self?
Yeah, and so as at the end of it, they're kind of ushered over to the next scenario, and that's it's over here with Henry. So if you go counterclockwise around the circle to follow the little arrows in the ground, you see that we're over here with Henry. And we start to realize the questions are getting a little harder. So if you all come over with me, if you can, I'm not sure if you're having lag, but if you can come over or use your camera controls. So you can left-click on Henry and get a note card, and it'll tell you who Henry is, your relationship with him. He's a coworker. He gives you a question that's a little harder. He says, hey, my wife and I would like to have you and your wife for dinner on Saturday night. Can you make it? Well, I don't have a wife. I'm a gay man who's got a gay male partner, so I have to figure out what I'm going to say to him, because he's obviously extending, an invitation to me, and I really appreciate it. I want to, I don't want to spit in his face. What am I going to say? Do I want to come out with it? Do I want to, how do I want to break the news to him and not make him, feel awkward or anything like that? So how do I do that? So that's another thing. It's getting a little bit harder, and you can see that they've given some answers already. And then they move to the third little scenario here, and we have the real stinker. This guy is named Luis, and we left-click on him and get a note card, and then we find he's our boss, and he looks pretty grumpy, and he says, Will, I heard you plan to bring your partner to the awards dinner. I'm bringing my wife, but I don't think it's such a good idea for you to bring Ned. We both need to consider the effect on your career and our company, and he's your boss. And this is the really hard one. What are you going to say to him? So they came up with a few answers, as you can see. You're welcome to actually use the controls, add your own answers if you like. It's just very interactive.
So is this a group discussion exercise, or do they actually role play this, or?
Well, it's a role play in the sense that, we are Will. So we are in the position of being a person who works at this company who's a gay man.
Right.
And so that's a role playing in a sense. You're role playing with a mannequin, but it is also group discussion in that people type out the answers that they could possibly think of to give to this fellow, and then they discuss the pros and the cons of the different answers.
Okay, cool.
And yes, and the question is it going to get even harder than that? No, there is no transgender section. We only have the 3, and we figured that was hard enough. And I think we'd have probably a different room if we wanted to do transgender. You can only fit so much just in these little rooms. And then they get to when they get to the end, they get to the usual debrief board with the questions, and they do their whiteboarding on the Etherpad. usually there are chairs here so they can feel more comfortable and relaxed. A little bit of just cognitive trickery there. You put in a comfy chair and people just feel more comfortable. And we really wanted to do that here.
Excellent. So any more questions? We've got one more room to show you, and I think we're actually good with time. Looks like we've got just about 10 more minutes. But any questions before we move on?
We're finding, too, that the use of Whiteboard is really good for this type of breakout activities where everyone can type at the same time. It sounds like you're making heavy use of that.
Yeah, you could think of it, it's almost a benefit to virtual versus live because, live, obviously, not everyone's going to talk at the same time. So it does allow you to have that kind of simultaneous participation as well.
I love your technology.
Well, thank you. We had a whole team of people working on this. They have beautiful textures. All the textures are, they're all ours. So if we could always, reuse it or resell it or whatever we want.
All right. So why don't we all move to room E? And this one focuses on people with disabilities. And in this scenario, it's a wheelchair-bound sales representative. And the scenario is such that it gives participants a chance to actually sit in the chair, as you might see, although it can't get it to move. We did kind of look at trying that. But it's a situation, actually it does two things. It helps the participants experience what it must be like to be the employee, but it also gives them a chance to sort of try on the role and perceptions of the manager. So what might a manager of an employee who's wheelchair-bound be concerned about or experiences potential obstacles? So, Amy, if you want to kind of bring participants around to these boards.
Oh, yeah. And this is a funny one because this is the most low-tech of all the rooms, and yet it was not the least effective by any means. People said they came in here, they just sat in the chair, and they said it blew them away. I mean, we had people say, that chair, I just sat in the chair and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And there was something funny about that. In real life, anytime, you've probably all sat in wheelchairs. I mean, you can do that. It's not a problem. You can find them everywhere. But something about doing it in here, it was a very powerful experience. And I think part of it was that all these other avatars are standing around you. So I invite any of you to go ahead and sit in the chair, not all at once, but you'll kind of get a feeling of all of a sudden your perspective changes and you are relating to people very differently. So that was just very funny about that chair. We had no idea. We didn't see that coming. We were worried they wouldn't like this one because it didn't have enough bells and whistles, but it just goes to show that if you have a good, powerful instructional design, you don't always need the bells and whistles. So if you all want to come around again, counterclockwise again, to follow the arrows on the floor, you'll see the second scene, and that's what Laura described, that you then are getting the hiring manager's perspective. And here again, low tech, they just give you some things to discuss. Supposing that you weren't in the wheelchair, supposing that you're the manager of the fellow in the wheelchair, how do you deal with certain situations? And then finally, as we continue around the circle, we have, again, the same debrief board and Etherpad report out and discussion.
So those are the rooms. As I mentioned, in the typical session, people would spend, I think it's about a half an hour in each room, and then join back with all participants into the main room, come back to the seats. And then their comments that they posted on the debrief boards get brought to the main room. And then we do ask, similar to, face-to-face sessions, ask the different rooms to kind of report out what their insights were, what some of the comments were, their experiences. And then, as I mentioned, the facilitator would add in key learning points to really kind of round out what the learning objectives need to accomplish. And that's it. So questions? Or Amy, do you want to add in some final comments?
Only that this is the first tour. We've given a bunch of tours through. You are so much more experienced than anybody else we've brought through on these tours, and we have never, ever finished on time, ever. It just goes to show if you have experienced users, it's incredible how much you can get done. That's why these orientations are so important, I guess.
So any other questions or comments that we can answer for you?
Are all of your, I'm sorry, this is Joyce, are all of your participants from IBM as experienced as we are?
Absolutely not, and that's been a major challenge that we've faced. So not only do they not have the navigation skills and why the orientation is such a requirement, but they, in many cases, also don't have the technology. So it's been a major challenge as well. But Amy, you might want to add to that too.
How do you address that challenge?
Well, we did have a whole lot of, as you can see, we put a whole lot of thought into the Orientation Center, and we had a separate session. Let's see, I think we did it two different ways. One time we had a separate session for orientation just to not tire them out, and then they came back later for a little recap and then had the actual learning activity. Other times we've done it all in one fell swoop, but we have really hit them hard with the orientation, really, really streamlined it like crazy, and we have only taught them the things that they need to know for that learning activity. That tends to be how we can deal with the complexity of Second Life for a beginning user, just teach them exactly what they need to know. So we have, elsewhere in Learning Commons, we have another more generic learning orientation center, and you're welcome to walk through that, but we just really, we've put a lot of thought into the orientation, really, really streamlining it and paring it down. We had a terrible problem with laptops and connectivity, because with so many people and so many of them are from growth markets, that's even a bigger problem than the ramp up. Because if you're having your lag is really, really, really bad, you can't learn. You say, why can't I walk? You think it's your fault. And it's not. It's just your lag. So that is a bigger problem even than the orientation.
Okay, I think there was another question.
Yeah, MDK had asked exactly the question I was going to ask too. Have you discussed doing identity switching, where you change gender or race or other things of your avatar? Putting yourself in the wheelchair is one way of doing that, and I just tried it out there. And it's really powerful. Just a few seconds of sitting down in the wheelchair, just experiencing the world from that perspective, I think is really changes your mind. Did you have thoughts about taking that further with playing around with the avatar identities?
We did, actually. So in the early stages of design, you can imagine how many different ideas we had about how we want to achieve the same objective. So that was clearly one of them. And I'm trying to remember why we didn't end up going that route. I think it was just more difficult in terms of, actually I don't remember, Amy, maybe you do, but that was definitely one of the considerations. Do we have people sort of change their avatars as well?
We did have a cultural intelligence pilot, more for like international identity, sense of identity, and we had people assuming avatars of different countries and that sort of thing. But we didn't do it here. I'm sure we discussed it, but boy, I'll tell you one thing that we learned from this, and I saw it coming, but sometimes you can't stop it. This pilot, this went way over budget. Just to be honest here, we really did not think that this was going to take many, many, many months to develop. I mean, I don't even know how many months we spent on it, but it was a whole team of people, like 4 designers. We pulled in multiple facilitators, a tech crew, builders, scripters, all kinds of stuff. So this is the output of it, but there's so much more that you could do. But these things do get very, very, very out of hand. That's always what I tell people in Second Life. You're going to overbuild, so watch yourself.
Things grow. So I see we just have 2 minutes left, but any either final comments or questions we can answer for you?
I think you already addressed the MD Kemmler's question there. The length of the class was 2 hours, right?
Yes. Amy, I'm trying to remember, 90 minutes or 2 hours, but it was in that range for sure. And that was after a 1-hour orientation session.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I get some more information about using virtual world for mentoring?
Yes, actually, if you would like to come back to Learning Commons, just go down to the main ground there. Use the teleport map or whatever you'd like, and you'll see a big mentoring area. It's right there on the teleport map, and you can see. I'll have to check, but I think the tools are available to anybody. You can just use those Reser tools. You'll see a big tools button, a green tools button, and you can res all kinds of different scenes. But we do a lot of what we call, how people do speed dating? We do speed mentoring. So we have people in little clumps, and they meet together with a mentor, and then they move to another clump, and they meet with other mentors, and they get mentored by several people in 1 hour, and it's really jam-packed. They learn a lot of stuff. It's very popular.
I'm a futurist, and I write something called the Herman Trend Alert, which goes out to 29,000 people. I've written in 87 countries in 4 languages every week, and I've written about IBM and Second Life before, and I have included information about what you guys have been doing, but this whole thing about mentoring is just a marvelous opportunity for me to share this with the world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laura and Amy. This was a great presentation, and I think you get a flavor in the chat here. People here are really impressed of your creative use of the space, and not just doing what you would do in a classroom, but really taking advantage of the 3D space and doing new things in new ways that you couldn't do in any other way. This is just really creative and tackling a very difficult training task. I can appreciate from having worked on this now for the last few months that this is perhaps the most difficult kind of training task that anyone can face, and I think you've done it in a really creative way. And thanks for being so open and sharing. You guys at IBM have always been a beacon here in the virtual worlds community as far as doing a lot of creative things and also sharing it with others, and it makes it a whole lot easier for us to make the case for other companies when we can point to a great company like yours that are already doing it. So thanks so much, and thanks for keeping it up for a few days. Just finally, there was a good question here. It's a bit of a bummer that each participant only get to do one of these breakouts. Have you had any thoughts about extending it and letting people do all of or more than one breakout?
Well, we'd offer that opportunity, but we could,
I mean, this could easily be a full day of activity, couldn't it? Or perhaps spread out over time.
Absolutely, and you can customize it, and bring one just group. For one business unit or, a team, let them just use one of the spaces. So there's a number of different ways, you're correct, that you could use this program and tools.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amy and Laura. This has been great. And thanks, everyone, for coming. We had a huge participation today. That's great to see the great interest. And thanks to Lianis for making for live streaming video. And we'll have the video up on the Facebook page here. And come back and see us next week. Paul Kapp is going to speak. We're going to be in Web Alive next week, so it's browser-based. So check out our Facebook page for the link for that. He has a new book coming out about gamification, so it should be a great meeting. So I hope to see you all next week. And as always, if we can help you with your learning needs, feel free to contact myself if you want to have discussion with us at the Groundspeak Group. I'm at Anders at groundspeakgroup.com. So thanks, everyone, and thanks, Amy and Laura in particular.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.